Well, it is great to have back with me researcher, explorer, author, now big time conference speaker, Hugh Newman. Hugh, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. It's great to have you back. It seems like again I can barely keep up with all your travels, all your conference speaking now. Where have you been last, Hugh? Where it seems like you were just was it in Turkey?
Yeah, we did a tour to Turkey in May. That was kind of epic. Before that, I was in Mexico for a month, exploring all the Olmec sites, which is an interesting place to go, especially with all the cartel stuff kind of peaking out there. It appears now, and yeah, so we've been doing a bit of traveling over the winter. We've been doing stuff around Britain as well. But yeah, we were trying to stop and focus on the book, myself and JJ Ainsworth. But there's a lot to do, a lot of conferences coming up, some tours we're running as well. But there's, like you say, there's a megalithic world to see, so we've got to keep exploring.
Right. Yeah, and I just was creeping on your Facebook page. You were just posting some photos the last week or so of you at some crop circles that showed up there in the UK. I think it was near Faulkner's Stone Circle near Avebury. Tell us a little bit about the crop circles that you have visited the last couple weeks and any new theories regarding this enigma, especially there in the UK.
Yeah, there's a few have turned up. There's one, like you say, in the Avebury. This is Faulkner's Circle. Is what a couple of stones are left there. It was a small stone circle, actually, just next to the megalithic avenue that goes down from Avebury. It's called the Kennet Avenue. Goes down to the sanctuary, and there was basically a crop circle had turned up in a field, kind of in the valley there between the Ridgeway and the avenue. And so yeah, it's kind of a cool location next to an ancient site, which is always good for these things to kind of be, especially when you're flying your drone, you kind of get these amazing shots with all this stuff in the background. And there's another one, a huge one turned up. This is clearly a kind of bit of a funny design, shall we say, a bit of humor in it, with like a big Joker's face near Stonehenge, right next to where another one turned up last year, funnily enough. So there's been a few here and there. A couple, there's a nice Celtic knot, also in Wiltshire, which was placed between these two trees in this kind of field in this valley. So yeah, as for theories, no, nothing has changed. I mean, clearly some of them or all of them are kind of man-made. There's an artistic land art element to them, which I hugely appreciate nowadays. But there's still a historic mystery that goes back tens, if not hundreds of years. And so, even though those that make them today were obviously inspired by a genuine phenomena, which was around a long time ago, and could still be happening a little bit now.
Right. So it sounds like you lean towards most of the crop circles we see today are man-made creations, whether they're doing it with drone or some kind of cool tech, very artistic. And it's kind of like having been there in England with you last year, it's kind of its own cool vibe. All the crop circle hunters show up and whenever a new one appears. But let me just ask you one more time. You mentioned the original enigma of these crop circles that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Anything you can share on that real quick, just from your research, the earliest or some of the earliest crop circles that popped up, where were they and what were the mysteries surrounding those?
Yeah, there's quite a lot actually. I did a kind of ton of research on that because I was fascinated about the locations they were turning up in, because often they're associated with ancient sites, megalithic sites. But there's a genuine prehistory of crop circles. There's a couple of books that have looked into this as well that people have written. And with the most famous one is in the 1600s. It's called the Mowing Devil in Hertfordshire, which is the east of England. And some strange lights, some fiery lights were seen in the field. This was reported in this kind of woodcut news report. And the next morning they went out there and there's this big flattened circle and they called it the Mowing Devil. And it was reported upon as like the devil had done it in the night. And we have also numerous other scientists, really, from the 1800s. They witnessed them all across Britain. Robert Plot was one of them. and he wrote about them in some of his texts, witnessing them. There's some old aerial photography from the 1900s, early 1900s, all over the place that seem to have them in there. I just can't believe people were going out there and making them at these times. Whereas nowadays people do, they get inspired by all this and they go out and they create this astonishing artworks, based upon very sacred geometry and other such things. But there's still some mystery associated with them. I mean, I've literally been filming it with my drone, and actually a ball of light has just flown over the crop circle, and I've got it on camera. So you get things like this actually happening. And obviously we have balls of light, creating the crop circles. That famous video that came out in 1996, although some people say that's a hoax. But it's an unusual thing, and it's kind of like, it makes the summers interesting in rural Western England here. We kind of have something to do, go out and explore these kind of strange effigies in the landscape.
That's fascinating that there were crop circles popping up in the Middle Ages. That's a rabbit hole I got to go down deeper, but let's kind of keep it in the UK as far as discussion goes. In your latest newsletter, you had a blurb about the giant megalithic capstone of, I think it was called Tickenswood, and you also mentioned and the haunted dolmens. So, if you can, tell us about this giant capstone and this mysterious dolmen.
These are sites in South Wales, close to Cardiff, and there's two sites. There's actually probably many more, but St Lythans is the haunted dolmen apparently, and it's kind of related to these Arthurian myths of hunting with dogs and things like this. Um, and it used to be a long barrow, even though what's left is a dolmen, and it's got some. I mean, the whole field is supposed to be cursed. A cursed field is what it's been termed as. So nothing grows there properly. It's got this weird energy. Some people say it's haunted, and there's lots of other kind of structures nearby. But further along on this route in southern Wales, you have Tinkin's Wood Burial Chamber, which is absolutely huge. The capstone is like a kind of, it's just the floor of the living room. It's huge. It's quite thin. It's not relatively thin. It's like 2 feet thick, but it's absolutely massive, and it covers this whole part of this burial chamber. It's a 7 Cotswold type burial chamber, which are some of the oldest in Britain. Some of them go back to 3600 BC, some even up to 4000 BC, according to some people. And there's tons of structures and stones in all the fields nearby as well. And it hasn't really been thoroughly researched, but this is a very impressive site. I mean, you get these. I mean, it's only like 2.5 hour drive from here near Stonehenge, and so it's not difficult to get to. It's a great day out. We do that on our tours. Often we take a day trip there sometimes, but usually when we do our tours from Glastonbury for the conference, we do every May. So yeah, they're pretty epic. I mean, they're pretty cool sites. Considering they're just in this rural part of kind of southern Wales.
Yeah, I was taken back by the photo of the huge capstone. Had never seen that before. So very interesting. And then you said it's by this dolmen that used to be a long barrow. And you said there was a lot of negative energy. How would you describe that negative energy? Like, what are you feeling?
Well, it's not me particularly, but we go there with quite a lot of people when we do our little group tours for the conference, and there's a lot of sensitive people there, psychics and things like this, and they pick it up. A lot of people do, and so I don't know what's going on there. Whether it was kind of some bad event took place there, some kind of murders or sacrifice or something like this. Who knows? I mean, but there's something weird about some places. I mean, I picked this up at other places I've travelled to as well, where you just get this kind of vibe that you shouldn't be there. Weird stuff kind of kicks off. But yeah, you do get that, But with Tinkin's Wood, that is a glorious place. That is like just the glory of South Wales. The capstone is massive. It's the biggest in Britain. Some people say the biggest capstone in Europe. It's huge. I mean, it's like it takes you 12, 15 seconds to walk across it. It's that big. It's all flat on top, so you can kind of get up on top of it and take a little stroll. But there's yeah, and that is a kind of huge site. Yeah, and it's I do recommend people check it out if you're ever going to Cardiff in Wales. You can easily get there from there.
Speaking of long barrows, I wanted to just bring up West Kennet Long Barrow. That was one of my favorite sites that we saw on our Mysteries of England tour last year with you in the summer. Just an incredible site, way up on that hill. It's just this beautiful hike up, and then there it sits at the top of this hill. And from, if my memory serves me right, from West Kennet, you can look out and see the artificial mound in the distance. So tell us a little bit about Silbury Hill. Was there anything ever discovered inside of that? Skeletons? And then any legends with West Kennet Long Barrow? Remind me how old it is and why it's so. It's the biggest, greatest long barrow in that area, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, this dominates the whole skyline. It's all near Avebury as well. So we're going back to the whole Avebury complex. So Silbury Hill sits in like the heart of the Avebury complex, almost like in a valley, in a kind of dip. It's huge. I mean, this is the biggest mound in Europe by far. West Kennet sits sort of above that on a hill. It takes like 15 minutes to walk up there. It's 100 meters long originally, but only about 20 meters of it, or 60 feet of it, is actually kind of long barrow with the big megaliths, and you can walk inside it with all these chambers. That dates back to at least 3,650 BC. They found multiple burials, up to 40 burials in there. Some of the stones were added afterwards by a different culture, the Beaker people, and there's lots of people have had weird experiences in there. There's like people have been drumming in there, and there's sort of portals have opened up. The energies are pretty intense. It's all aligned to east to the equinox, but also to the solstices, sunrises, because the entrance was originally quite wide. And it's it's pretty epic actually. And this one again, it's really old. It's older than Stonehenge, older than Avebury Stone Circle, contemporary actually with Tinked's Wood, and this long barrow culture were doing stuff like the whole Neolithic people of Britain were doing stuff all over the country like that. The only thing that's anywhere near as old as that is up on Orkney, a place called I forgot on Papa Westray. There's a site up there as well. So there's quite a lot going on, when it comes to like this super ancient earlier culture of the Neolithic. But you get that a lot around these parts in southwest England, around Wiltshire especially. And people talk about it having this kind of energy about it, and it certainly has. I mean, you spend a bit of time up at West Kennet or in the Avebury landscape. There's something odd about it. You just can't quite put your finger on it. You've been there, you know the score. It's like Avebury's so big. They built an entire village inside it. That's how big it is. My good friend Andrew Collins used to live in there, and he kind of had to move out after a while because it kind of did his head in. Because he's like you get something going on there, like spirits moving around or something like this. But yeah, the whole Avebury landscape in West Kennet is almost like everything was built around West Kennet. It feels like it was like the sort of peak of the hill. It was like the marker for the sacred part of the landscape, dominating that whole area.
We saw some strange skulls that were in that Avebury museum. I think they were associated with, fairies. They had skinny faces, and I know Maria Wheatley's written about these. Were any weird, strange skulls like that found at West Kennet?
There was a couple actually. Yeah, I remember when we were writing our book, The Giants of Stonehenge in Ancient Britain, where Jim Vieira and I came up. We found a few accounts of what appeared to be flattened skulls inside West Kennet, but people have questioned if they were just flattened over time because of the pressure of the rock and earth they were buried under, or whether they were actually like that. Because there's quite a few examples across the British Isles of elongation of the skull. Maria Wheatley has done quite a bit of research on it. We've found a few accounts as well, which are kind of inexplicable. And so that is a thing, yeah. Not so much as you get in Peru or other parts of the world, but certainly it seems like there was this age-old tradition of altering the baby's skull, which is a bit weird when you think about it. Imagine if someone tried to do that to a baby today. I think they'd get lynched or arrested or put in prison or whatever, because it's a pretty serious thing to be doing.
Yeah, you've been writing a bit lately, Hugh, about the power, the importance of solstices, going back to the Neolithic or the Mesolithic and the Paleolithic. Anything you can share with us? I know you're going to be talking about this at an upcoming conference, but about solstice alignments. Any insight you can share on the power and the importance of these?
The solstice is a remarkable, moment twice a year. Obviously, we have the summer solstice coming up in a couple of weeks. We have the winter solstice on December the 21st or thereabouts. And obviously, Stonehenge is the big one. Everyone knows about the big solstice on Stonehenge, and it's got this avenue. It's got the hill stone all aligned to it. I usually go there most years, although this year I'm at the Cosmic Summit speaking about solstices. Funnily enough, and and but there's lots of summer solstice sites. It's the peak of the year. It's the kind of most sunlight and light you're going to get, least darkness. So it's almost like the peak year, the celebration time of the year. And there are some traditions. There's very few traditions compared to the winter solstice. The winter solstice is myths and legends and traditions all around the world because it's like about death, regeneration, and rebirth of the sun and so forth. Even the Christian mythos with Jesus and everything, kind of coming out and being born on the 25th is when the sun starts returning to the light after being at the still point, the standstill, which means solstice in Latin. But the summer solstice is like the peak of the year. So there are traditions relating to water, to lighting beacons on hills and things like this. The water traditions are really intriguing, actually, because often you get, if we're looking at pagan traditions in Britain, you have stories of them collecting dew, collecting like the water that builds up on the grass and in the ground and things like that overnight, and using that as a sacrament, using that as a kind of healing or fertility tool. And also they put it on your faces and things like this. For like to beautify and to like give pure kind of water, and the water collection of water like that is often associated with goddess traditions as well, according to Maria Gimbutas and J.J. Ainsworth. And so you have these kind of traditions here, but we must remember that the power of the sun itself is insane. I mean, I think people don't realize that like 2 minutes of sunlight coming from the sun to the earth can power the whole earth, everything that's plugged in, cars, everything else, electricity, for a year. Just 2 minutes of sunlight is enough power to run the planet for a year. So just perspective there. So imagine what it's doing to you. Imagine what we see, what it does to plants and things like this. They grow really quickly. But imagine what it's doing to us. It's like having this triggering things in our DNA, kind of waking us up and being forced into these extra hours of sunlight where it's particularly sunny as well, as less clouds, less bad weather. I think it has a profound effect. It kind of gives a sense of enlightenment. So I think that was part of the summer solstice thing, but there's also like the extreme points of the year. So if you're looking at the horizon, to the furthest point north the sun rises is the summer solstice. Then you come back, you go east to the equinox, then back to the winter solstice. That's the furthest point south on the horizon the sun rises on the winter solstice. So there's this kind of area which you can look at in the sky for sunrise. That's it. That's all you got. Interestingly, the moon, and this is happening right now, I actually went there last night to have a look at this because it's the extreme point of the southern lunastice, or the major lunar standstill, where the moon reaches, it kind of follows roughly the position of the sun, but it goes further north and further south. So we're going further south at the moment, past the winter solstice point. And this is part of an 18.6 year cycle, which I also witnessed 18.6 years ago when I was in Callanish to witness this with my friend Stuart Mason and others, where the sun, up at that latitude, the moon rather, doesn't even set. It literally rolls across the landscape. So I've been observing the moon here for the last 2 nights from Stonehenge. And the moon rises, around 9:30 or 10:30, and then it just goes across the sky slowly like this, and then slowly sets. Whereas normally it's like this, goes up and down and things like this through the year. But at these extreme points, this was also being recorded by the ancient people. And so the sun and the moon were the two calendrical motifs that they were building into their megalithic sites. And we know that because Because at Stonehenge, we have the 4 station stones, which are like a rectangle of stones outside of the main stone circle. And these alignments between them and the diagonals and between them, they form a 5, 12, 13 Pythagorean triangle based upon megalithic yards, but also each angle that's created by them is part of this lunar cycle. Each part marks it, and it only works at this latitude as well. If you go further north, it will become an obtuse kind of rectangle. If you were trying to measure the moon like that, so it's a very specific location here as to why Stonehenge was put in place. And we could talk more about this, because not only that does that fit with the solstice alignment, it perfectly bisects the solstice alignment, this rectangle. But also there's evidence that now that the solstice at Stonehenge was actually being observed 10,000 years ago. So that's 5,000 years at least before Stonehenge was even a twinkle in anybody's eye. You know, there were things going on in this landscape. We know that because Blickmead, we know that the kind of spring, the natural spring, just down the road, the other direction from me, is 10,000 years old. We know that there were what are called periglacial strips, which are these natural features in the landscape, and they just happen to orient from where Stonehenge would later become. Along the landscape, these 2 strips going in northeast, the direction of the summer solstice sunrise. This is where the avenue was built over. And at the bottom of that, where the avenue takes a turn and goes off in a different direction, there was an old mound there called the Newell's Mound, which they think could be natural, it could be artificial. But there was also a mound within Stonehenge as well, which could have been natural, could have been artificial. So there was 2 mounds and an alignment naturally forming in the landscape, which formed the summer solstice sunrise. But also from the other direction, if you're looking up the hill, up the avenue, up the periglacial strips, it would be the winter solstice sunset. So there could have been a natural kind of observing just by natural features that created Stonehenge being chose for this particular spot thousands of years later. And we also know that it's a very ancient location, because not just that, what I just explained, but also this Cecil Newell, he wrote a small book about Stonehenge, and he found out that, and later after his book came out, he discovered these 3 post holes made of pine, huge great things like this wide each one, could have been up to 30 feet tall. And these are 10,000 years old, because there were some remnants of the pine at the bottom, burnt ash, and they found they were 10,000, just over 10,000 years old. And so we have this extremely ancient element related to the solstice at Stonehenge that not many people even know about. So I've written all this up. I published this in an article I published just before the last winter solstice, but it's going to be going in mine and JJ's upcoming book. But it just shows you that, you know, if you dig a bit deeper, you can find there's a lot more underlying what these sites are all about. I mean, Stonehenge really is just the tip of the iceberg.
It's so fascinating how these ancient engineers all over the world were building their superstructures around these solstice alignments. You know, you mentioned Stonehenge, one of the big ones. That reminds me of like Pisac in Peru or Machu Picchu. They have the Chicana stones, the Andean cross. I'm talking about this symbol here. So you'll see half of this, right, sticking up at Machu Picchu, megalithic, white granite, and you're thinking, why is only half of it sticking out of the ground? Well, when the solstice hits it, the other half emerges as a shadow, right? And then you've got what you write about in your book at Karahan Tepe, and how the winter solstice, you see the sun come through the porthole and illuminate that face, right?
You mentioned Peru. I mean, in a few days' time, Inti Raymi celebrations kick off. These are like a gigantic, kind of almost like nationwide, but based around Cusco, of celebrating to their winter solstice, because it's in the southern hemisphere. So even though it's our summer solstice, it's their winter solstice. And they've been doing that for definitely hundreds of years. Possibly it could have been an earlier tradition, which is most likely because some of their sites like Tiwanaku, even Pumapunku, there's been a new winter solstice alignment discovered there by Kevin Esslinger when we were working on a reconstruction of it, and so we were kind of blown away by that. But this celebration of these times a year is huge. I mean, all over the world with the stuff going on. I've found out various Native American traditions, the Chumash and other tribes celebrate the solstices in a very profound way. We have obviously the Karahan Tepe alignment, which is a very strong winter solstice alignment, one of the strongest, in fact, because it's like 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance it could even happen. But we also have sites like Newgrange, which have a precise winter solstice sunrise alignment. We have Maze Howe in Orkney, which is a winter solstice sunset alignment. We have sites like Krakuno in Brittany. We have Karnak in Brittany and Karnak, actually, in Egypt as well, both winter solstice alignments. But this Krakuno rectangle, this, or quadrilateral they call it. Let me just explain this from. This is really interesting because I quickly explain this because it blew my mind. This is the work of Howard Crowhurst. So basically, it's a 3-4-5 triangle. It's another Pythagorean triangle, marked in megalithic yard measurements, and the diagonal is the 5. You get the 3-4, and the diagonal. In fact, the two diagonals on it, at that latitude of Karnak in Brittany, where we have some of the most magnificent megalithic sites, those two diagonals mark the exact alignments to the summer and the winter solstice sunrises, based upon a 3-4-5 triangle. This is what Howard Crowhurst calls astrogeometry. I do recommend you get Howard on here and have a talk with him, because you'll be blown away by his stuff. Absolutely, he's astonishing, some of the stuff he comes up with. And so what they're noticing there, it's a bit like we saw at Stonehenge with the station stone rectangle, that only works with the moon and the extreme points of the moon at that latitude. You start shifting the latitude north or south, and the rectangle won't work properly. Likewise in Brittany, in Karnak and Brittany as well, the 3-4-5 triangle perfectly marks the solstices at that latitude. And so that is astonishing. So they were working with sophisticated Pythagorean geometry thousands of years before Pythagoras was born, and associating that with the solstices and the movements of the moon in high detail. And this is also being found at Karahan Tepe now. This is something that Howard worked on, and he kind of after we discovered the winter solstice alignment there, he found the exact point, exact moment of sunrise, which is like only 10 minutes later does the stone head get illuminated. But at the exact moment of sunrise, he found the angle is related to the golden section numbers as well. And so he thinks they may have been working with that in the landscape, even in Taztepela, even in Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe area. And so he's finding all sorts of stuff. But we must remember that this isn't just one era. We're not just talking about the early Neolithic like Karahan Tepe, or the kind of classic Neolithic Bronze Age like we get Stonehenge, Avebury, Karnak, Brittany, and so forth. There's much earlier use of the solstice going back tens of thousands of years, which we can certainly get into. I mean, it's astonishing when you start digging into it and you realize that this goes beyond kind of trying to create a calendar so you can control your crops and cultivation, things like this. This is a whole different thing. People had this kind of profound kind of connection with what was going on in the sky, whether it was in the daytime with the sunrises and the movement of the sun during the day, or at nighttime with the moon and the stars and the constellations shifting over the precession of the equinoxes. It would have had a profound effect, and they would have done everything they could to record it, but also honor it, because they saw it as the realm of the gods.
Fascinating. We've mentioned Karahan Tepe a couple times, so let's stick in Turkey now. You guys just had a tour in Turkey, went to Karahan, you went to Gobekli Tepe. And so let's talk about what you saw, what you're excited about. I know there's some new discoveries that were just unearthed at Karahan Tepe in that new enclosure at the top of the hill. So tell us what you saw there.
Yeah, so this is Karahan Tepe. This dates back to 9,400 BC. It's the sister site to Göbekli Tepe, if people aren't aware of it. It's only recently been excavated since late 2019. really kind of kicked off when we discovered the winter solstice thing in December 2021. But more, even since then, more has been excavated. They're kind of going up the hill now. This is what's happening. They're uncovering more and more and more. And so what they found one of the most impressive enclosures is right at the peak of the hill. And last year, or sorry, I think it was September, October 2023, they discovered this 7.5 foot tall statue of a man holding his phallus with ribs, this cool haircut like a Mohican, with a kind of sphinx type kind of fake beard on him. And they found these stone plates, this vulture statue, this big hold stone, this huge enclosure. But at the back of it, they've now started excavating like the back side of it, the kind of south side of it, because the main is orientated to the north. And rather than just have benches and T-pillars going around the same level, they kind of go up in steps. So there's like a huge megalithic slab, then a T-pillar, then up higher, there's another huge megalithic, then a T-pillar, and then up higher, another slab, kind of going around the back. So it's almost like, going along with the contours of the hill. But it makes it like, hang on a sec, this is clearly, this is the perfect spot for an observatory, without a doubt. This is it. This is the spot. It's the highest point of the hill, and they're rising up towards the back, and they can see all directions, but they're essentially looking north through the enclosure, just off northeast, I think. And the whole stone is aligned to that. And this is why Andrew Collins is so happy, because all his research over the years, because hold stones and enclosures like that have been found at Gobekli Tepe to the north, in that direction. And it aligns with Deneb and Cygnus and things like this in the night sky, which was like the kind of portal to the other world after death, the vulture symbolism associated with that as well, with the vulture statue, 2.5 foot tall statue that was found there. So these huge platforms going around the back are really interesting. This is a whole new design spec we haven't seen in that part of the world at all. There seems to be large niches there as well, where statues could have been. We don't know, whether they found anything else or not. We'll probably find out in a couple of months, hopefully. But when we go back there in September on our next tour that we're doing out there, and also there's quite a few unusual kind of sort of blocks have been found with like strange kind of 3D reliefs on them. I'm including them in a video I'm just working on now. Going to upload it in very soon, and it's unbelievable what is being found. It's just the fact that they're still doing it. They're still trying to uncover it. Our only concern is that there's a roof starting to be built this month, over Karahan Tepe, like at Gobekli Tepe. And this is they've created lots of sort of holes around the edge to put foundations in and things like this. So that's a concern, because we're concerned that will block the winter solstice alignment. We hope it won't. From the plans we've seen, it looks like it might not. It might be okay. But we are concerned because it kind of takes away some of the magic of the place. But the designs look a bit different to Gobekli Tepe. They look like they're a bit more fluid, a bit more kind of kind of linked, fitting with the landscape, and they can be adapted and extended as excavations expand. But yeah, so I think there's concerns going on there, but there's also remarkable discovery still in the process of being made.
I wanted to ask you about this artifact at Gobekli Tepe. This always fascinated me. I know you've probably seen it in person, but I follow Nikkiana Jones. I've had her on the show and I've been on hers. She was sharing how when she went to this site with Jimmy and Michael Collins not so long ago, that she did not see that anymore. So do you have any idea where that went? Is it just been moved?
I know where it is, but it's unfortunate, the answer, really, because as soon as they discovered it, I think within days, they buried it in the same place, and that's it. And that's the end of that. It's in the northwest enclosures, basically. It's not the southeast, the main area of excavation. It's towards the northwest, where there's another roof they put up and done barely anything with it. But just next to that, just to the right of that, that's where it was found. And there's a whole bunch of T-pillars and other such things. But I know you mentioned Nikki and Jimmy Corsetti and Mike Collins of Wandering Wolf. They went out there in March and they did a bit of a kind of investigation, really, because they were looking at what was happening with the olive trees that have been dominating the kind of press, thanks to Jimmy's kind of focus on it. And they cleared them all now. They're not there. I mean, I said to Jimmy, I'd check, give him a report back, and I told him they've all gone. They've removed virtually every olive tree. And suddenly you're like, oh, it's the first time I've ever seen it without olive trees. And I've been going there for, 11 or 12 years. And it's like, oh my God, it makes you realize how much is still there, especially when you see the ground penetrating radar scans from 2014. There's huge enclosures going all across there, massive ones that are bigger than anything that's been discovered. So you mentioned that the stone, hopefully that'll become exposed when they expand the excavations there. But I'm hoping. I know Jimmy and others have been talking about this a lot. I've been in contact with them about this. It seems to be this impression that more excavation is going to start, because they realize they can't just sit on it anymore. They kind of have to do something. Now, it's all very slow there. There's reasons for that, but they could speed it up a bit, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know why they don't, when they realize what they've got there. So there are still things being done, whatever anyone says, there are still things being done. Karahan Tepe, they're going like full speed there. They're working hard at Birch. A lot is being uncovered there. They've uncovered the whole main enclosure there now. There's work now being done on a site called Chakmak Tepe. There's another site called Mendik Tepe. These are all kind of just south of Birch, which is all to the east of Şanlıurfa. There's work being done on Harbet Zuvan Tepesi, which is near Karahan Tepe. And there's also Sefir Tepe. Now, Sefir Tepe, Chakmak Tepe, Birch, they're all going to be open. People are hopefully going to be able to visit them this summer and going into the autumn as well. That's when we take our group back there in September. We're hopefully going to see all these. I've been on most of them myself already. But there's also Gobekli Tepe is always open, and Karahan Tepe, even though they're building a roof, it's still going to be open to the public. So that's good news. Because we were concerned, like we had at Gobekli Tepe like 7 or 8 years ago, when they built the roof there, they closed it for a year. But not at Karahan Tepe. There's a different way of creating the roof. They might have to close it for a few days when the big stuff just comes in and has to be set up. But yeah, so that's relatively good news, but also I'm kind of quietly sighing, just a little bit stressed about the whole roof thing, if it's going to block the alignment for the winter solstice.
It's been well documented how Gobekli Tepe is rewriting history, right? Because it challenges all these long-held assumptions about the development of human civilization, particularly the relationship between agriculture, religion, the rise of complex societies. So that's very interesting, Hugh. You said from what you can see, the Karahan Tepe excavations are going like full speed ahead, while we know, based on what you and Jimmy have documented, the Gobekli Tepe excavations seem to have been going purposefully slow. And at Gobekli Tepe, we've got these crazy artifacts like this one that I just showed on the screen that you're telling me they buried. Isn't that why you think they're slow walking the Gobekli Tepe excavations? Because it is turning the timeline of history upside down, and it's revealing these incredible artifacts that they're burying. Do you think that's got to be why they've slow walked Gobekli Tepe?
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure of the real answer to that. There's a lot of speculation about it. I've tried to talk to the archaeologists, but they just won't talk to me or Andrew Collins for some reason. And I just don't know, really. I mean, I think that they've got a genuine conservation issue, because this stuff is being exposed for the first time in like 10,000 years. So stuff can get stolen, stuff can get damaged, weather can affect it. Bird poo is affecting stuff at the moment. There's pigeons landing on tops of the T-pillars and pooing all over. And so there's things like this, so you got to they've got to consider all that, plus the tourism thing as well. People, there's so many people going to Gobekli Tepe now. In fact, they're building a larger visitor center further away from the site, quite a long way from the site. It's going to be huge, and they're probably going to close down the ones at the site, just use them as basic things, and so because you get thousands of people go there now, it's big time, Gobekli Tepe is getting big. It's like €30 to get in for one ticket. So I'm hoping they're going to utilize what they earn from all that and actually put it into serious excavation, because there's whole areas they could just excavate. I mean, it's just open now. Now all the trees have gone. But I think the big concern is preservation and making sure things don't get lost forever. So they have to go slow. That's for real. But they could go quite a bit faster as well. They could have moved that big double porthole stone you showed me. They could have moved that to the museum. I think they'd be much safer there than it would lying in the ground. You know, with rubble all over it.
Check out the screen. Look at this, how huge this incredible artifact is that's got two, looks like precision cut rectangles. I mean, you see the men there working on it, it dwarfs them. Why in the world would you bury this but pull that wild boar out and other artifacts and display them in the museum, right? Or the T pillars. That to me smells so fishy.
It's weird. I mean, if they kept the photo secret, it might have been smarter. But they became public. This was actually found under Klaus Schmidt's rule when he was there quite a long time ago. It's 6 feet wide. That stone, by the way, it's over 6 feet wide. It's got this beautiful kind of beast kind of emerging out of the rock. Three of them, in fact, and a serpent, and all these cut marks in it. Beautiful framed windows in it as well. And it just makes you wonder, what on earth? I mean, what else is going to be found there? I think that's the question. I mean, that's what we're all kind of waiting for. But I think we're going to find, a lot more than we bargained for at these sites, because this is a completely missing, lost chapter of human history. This is what people don't realize. This isn't like just one stone circle. Each of the sites has 20 plus stone circles within them. This is what we're dealing with here. And they're now proving to be aligned to the solstices, to Deneb, Cygnus, to the moon, and other such things. And I think, just coming back to the solstice, I've even found a solstice, a summer and winter solstice alignment, I think, within Enclosure D at Gobekli Tepe, based upon one of the new discoveries that was made there last year, which is basically a certain specific part. It's like a section of a porthole stone with a big H on it, and these two kind of one's like a V turned on its side, the other one's like a C. And the H, I believe, is a symbol related to the solstices, something Martin Sweatman put forward as well in his book Prehistory Decoded. And it kind of makes sense, because you imagine you're standing behind the T pillars, you're looking at the two T pillars like that, with the horizon going like that, you've got an H. And so I think there's quite a basic understanding of what that could mean. I mean, I think there's other interpretations which are equally valid. This is just one interpretation. And so that, and where they found that stone, is exactly on the winter solstice sunrise alignment as well, and that would be between two outer T pillars as well as the central ones as well, like you get at Karahan Tepe. So if that was a porthole stone, the sun may have come through that on the winter solstice and illuminated something at the back, i.e. the boar, most likely, or pillar 43 next to it as well, which has all sorts of symbolism. And so we can't really prove any of that, because it's not being kept intact like Karahan Tepe was, thankfully. So you're able to prove that winter solstice alignment, and you can still go and see it today. Literally, if you go to Karahan Tepe on December the 20th to the 22nd, even 23rd, because the solstice lasts for a few days, you'll see the face get illuminated if it's not cloudy. Simple as that. And so this is why it baffles me that it's not being recognized by the archaeologists, because this is a major, beautiful thing everyone can go and witness, especially the one at Karahan Tepe, because you can see it for yourself. You can actually see the head get illuminated and the light moving around the head for 45 minutes. So they can make a big deal out of that. I mean, that would they get loads more people wanting to go there because they know it's connected and aligned to solstices and things like that. So, yeah, that is worth. I want to push that into the archaeologist's brain that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, Hugh, what's it going to take for you to get a time lapse video and break it to the world yourself of the incredible light hitting that serpentine face?
I've already done that. This is already out. It's all over the internet. The thing is It's that people, they think it's like they don't, for some reason they don't believe it, even though it's an observable phenomenon. That's what's so baffling. No, we have time lapses. We went there 2 years on the run. We spent a total of like 6 mornings there over 2 years. We will go back probably this year again just to have a look, but to see if the roof's blocking it or not. But the problem is that these sites, once they become official sites, you're not allowed to go in before 8 a.m. and things like this. So we've got to work around things like that. I'm looking to get official permission to go and observe it actually and record it. I think that's the next step because there's no other way to do it really, especially when it's just happening every year and people aren't taking it on board. The archaeologists, the people building the roof, the government, and things like this.
Okay, yeah, I've seen your photos of the, kind of time lapse sequence, but I didn't realize you actually had video footage. So I have an idea for you. You can watermark it with your name on it, Hugh Newman. Get me that video file, and I will post it and tag you wherever I can, and we'll hopefully get it out to even wider audience. Hugh Newman's discovery. And JJ, yeah, yeah. Watermark both your names on it. I'll help you push that out, and we'll blow the dam open.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think it's a smart move. Because I think if they do build the roof and it ends up blocking it, there's going to be a bit of an uproar in a few years' time when they clearly know about it already. But yeah, thanks, Dee. I appreciate your support with that. And let's see what we can do. And as we build up to the next solstice, the winter solstice, we can kind of get more focused on that.
I wanted to ask you about one more site in Turkey before we end talking about Egypt. Khafre Tepe, the basalt inscriptions near Lake Van. It looks eerily similar to Pumapunku. I love the photos you posted, you guys and JJ there. This is in Turkey, but again, it looks so much like what you see in Pumapunku. And you see the inscriptions deeply kind of embedded in these blocks. Tell us about this. How old do you think it is really? And what do those inscriptions, what are they saying?
This is very intriguing. This is Urartian script. This when we go there, we meet the guy. He's been working there for like 30 or 40 years, and he's decoded the whole script basically. It's basically like Sumerian cuneiform. It's Akkadian is closer to than it's like kind of Sumerian, if you know what I mean. Because Akkadians were in this area at some point, a couple of thousand years BC or whenever they were there, and it's very similar. So it's got this whole kind of similarity. So they're able to understand quite a lot of it. You find it at multiple sites, but Khafre Tepe is one of the main ones. You get it at Yanis Kalesi. You get it at a few other Urartian sites. I know Matthew Lacroix and others have been focused on that as part of their research, and for good reason. It's a very, very interesting, people just don't notice it. They don't really know much about it, but we've been going there for several years on our Eastern Turkey tours that we do in September. We're going back this September, people can come along, of course, but because these sites are like, Matthew Lacroix and others are making it big news, and I think people are going to wake up and realize there's something profound going on. But when it comes to the actual translations, some of them are kind of like incantations to gods and goddesses and things like this, which you get in a lot of these kind of inscriptions. Normally, they're not practical ones like you find in the kind of tablets, the clay tablets. They're more kind of trade and kind of day-to-day stuff, whereas these are quite interesting, and I haven't actually seen the full translations myself. I've got to there's a Turkish book on it which we've got to translate to get the translations of the early text, the cuneiform. But yes, it's really, really fascinating site, and the stonework there is pretty astonishing. I mean, they're not huge blocks or anything, but they're perfectly shaped. They're like almost like lasered. This is why it's caught so many people's attention. And you get that at a few of the sites in that area, but Khafre Tepe is one of the main ones. And it does look like the way they've been put together, there's no mortar. They're definitely sacred kind of precincts of the sanctuary part of the site. They're not like kind of domestic or anything like that. And you have to question what's going on here, because the dating on it, there's been big debates about this, but the official dating is only like 1,500 BC at the most. But people have claimed it older, like Matthew Lacroix and others. More research needs to be done on that, in my opinion, because they're pretty firm with the dating. They have found stuff under the water in Lake Van as well, so that could push the dates back. But what is another site of real interest is Van Castle, because around one edge of that no one knows about this. We didn't even know about it until we actually saw it and got there. There's a giant megalithic platform made of blocks, probably 80 tons apiece. I made a video about this on the Megalithomania YouTube channel. We always go there on our tours, obviously. But this is like, what the hell? How did this even get? I mean, this is a different level. This is ancient as well, super ancient. This is really different. I mean, it's massive. I mean, it's like a kind of Baalbek type platform, but the stone is not quite as big. But what on earth is that doing there, and who put that there? So it's believed it could have been a port going from the castle or the Khalesi into Lake Van many thousands of years ago. So you have that as well. Um, and so, yeah, there's quite a lot going on out there. But before we do finish, I just want to mention one thing about solstices, because we're on this theme of the solstice. It's this time of year. We're kind of in the solstice period now. One of the areas of research which has really blown my mind, if we come away from Turkey, but I believe it relates to what's discovered at Karahan Tepe, are the Paleolithic caves of Europe, in France, the Dordogne area, also in Spain, Altamira, and other places, where many of these caves, including Lascaux Cave, which is 17,000 years old, but also Shavat Caves and others, they go back to 35,000 years, some of these. And through various French translations of research that has done over the years, and also Martin Sweatman mentioned one of these alignments in his book Prehistory Decoded. It's been worked out that many of these caves, they're chosen with long entrances that are aligned precisely to the solstices. Like, seriously, I mean, out of 130 caves that are investigated, 122 of them were aligned to the solstices or the equinoxes precisely. As though, and so the light, in some of the cases, the light would come in through the length of the cave and illuminate a part of the ceiling or wall where many of these paintings of these amazing animals and stars and everything else have been found. And so there's a reverence to the solstice going back 30 plus thousand years. And so how on earth could they have come up with this? How could they have chosen specific caves that had these alignments? Is it a weird coincidence, or is it something else? So that's something I'm getting into now. I'm actually going out there this year, to go and investigate this, go into some of the caves and check out some of the orientations, because some of the alignments are just, hang on a sec. So this is a whole different thing. And also in these caves, they found these fertility amulets, like these goddess figurines, these Venuses, they're called. Some of them are even carved into the stonework in 3D relief, like you find at Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. And so I believe there was something about solstices, caves, and going into these altered states on these times a year, and it would be like a mind blowing thing. And according to the research we've been looking at, these French researchers, they found that they weren't anything to do with calendars. They may have been, because they found notches and timings of everything, but it's more to do with initiations, rites of passage, and rituals, activity at certain times of years, often for the lifetime of the individual. This is based upon data collected through hunter-gatherer societies all over the world. They kind of related that to the Paleolithic people, who were also hunter-gatherers, as were the initial builders of Gobekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe. So I think there's much more to the solstice than people realize. It's not just sites like Stonehenge. It's not just Karahan Tepe. All over the world, we have wild celebrations even today, like we find at the Inti Raymi. It's all kicking off any day now in Peru. But even in these super ancient places, it was revered, and there's data collected. You can find these bone plaques, all these numbers, sort of notches carved into them, counting the moon cycles and the solar year. And it was a real science in the Paleolithic time of the solstices. And so, just want people to kind of realize that we're moving into this phase of the year, which has been revered for this long. And I think it's worth taking that on board and feeling into that as we go through the whole solstice period.
Maybe it seems like you're hinting at your next book that's going to come out, and I have a title for it: Solstice Alignments in Cave Portals. And yeah, you mentioned the tunnel cave system that you found in Turkey. It was a couple years ago. We talked about this on a previous episode. It was photos of you and Andrew, but it wasn't just a cave. It was like a megalithic lined curved tunnel, right? That was mind blowing to see.
I mean, basically, it's over 100 feet long. I think we miscalculated it the first time we put the length out, and it just goes down at a slope, like 40-degree slope or something, and it's just completely carved out. It's like 12 feet wide, 8 feet tall, but it kind of staggers down as you go down. It's thinner sections, and at the bottom it turns right, but it's all blocked up with rubble, so you can't get to it. And that's right near, right pretty much within one of the Tastepala sites in that whole region, and so it's astonishing. I mean, I'm sure the archaeologists will find it soon, and they can kind of do some analysis of it. But yeah, I mean that is just it just shows you that there's still so much to be found.
Is that tunnel something that you're going to take your tour groups into?
No, you can't do that really. No, it's way too dangerous. Way too many spiders and rats probably as well. No, we can't. We're not allowed to say where it is. That was the agreement with the kind of landowners. So we can't even give the location away, unfortunately, at this present moment. But they might all change because, like I say, lots more is going to get excavated over the next few years in that region.
Hugh, this has been awesome. Let's end. One more question. I haven't got to talk to you since the world news broke a couple months ago about the Khafre Pyramid SARS scans. I watched one of your recent videos on your Megalithomania YouTube channel. Everybody subscribe to that. It was you, it was Andrew Collins and Biondi, and the other guy that broke that or did the research for the Khafre Pyramid scans. So I'd love to hear two things from you in closing. What's your latest thoughts on the whole Khafre SARS scan pyramid or controversy? And then we've got like new breaking news even of new discoveries in Egypt where scientists allege to have uncovered a second hidden city beneath the Giza pyramids. They say there's a shaft beneath Menkaure, the smallest of the three great pyramids, that mirrors the 2,000-foot shafts that supposedly run below Khafre. All this while Zahi Hawass is saying these results are impossible. So what's your response? What are your thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, I think people have got to keep an open mind with this one. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the background um, that people aren't aware of. There's data that hasn't been released yet, so just bite your tongue, the skeptics. This could all kick off even more so. But yeah, I think the initial discoveries were fascinating. I encourage the authorities there to go and take a look. Simple as that. Even if it's like non-invasive GPR stuff on the surface, or little trolley things you roll around, just to see what's going on there. I mean, let's take it a step further. I mean, the water levels are an issue. I had the privilege of going into the Tomb of the Birds with Andrew, something he discovered back in 2008, which leads directly to the central kind of middle pyramid, Khafre's pyramid. And I'm meeting up with Armando May and Filippo Biondi soon. We're at the Cosmic Summit. I'm also meeting them at the Gaia Sphere event, which was that interview that we did especially for Gaia TV. And they're coming over to England as well on November the 1st for our big Origins conference. So, I'm sure you put a link to that below. So people have got questions, and, just remember that this is a slow process of revealing, and as more data gets analyzed. So it's going to keep unfolding, and we look forward to meeting them in person and actually kind of finding out exactly what's going on. But there's even news now. Matt Bell, who does the Limitless podcast, he interviewed Zahi Hawass, and there's a whole project kicking off about something else in the Great Pyramid, another void discovered. And so that's all happening as well. So I think, it's all happening basically. And I would love to see this SARS scan data this SAR-scan technology applied to the whole area around southeast Turkey, because there's more underground cities are being discovered. There's one found in Midyat, there's one found in Konya. They keep finding them. We've found underground elements in the landscape. That tunnel we kind of had a look at. There's underground elements, rooms at Sayburch and other places, and so I guarantee there's going to be a whole lot more found there if we can apply that technology to that area. I think that would be really, really interesting to see where that goes.
Hugh, let's close with tell everybody about your upcoming tours and about, you've written so many books now, I can't even mention them all, but what are a couple of books that everybody must get and read of yours?
Well, this is the latest. This is the American edition of the Gobekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe book. It's all updated. It's got all the new stuff in it as well. That's just come out in America a couple of months ago. Obviously, we've got the English version. It's been out a year or so. Working on a bigger version of that. But I'm going to be, if people want to get copies of that, I'm going to be at the Cosmic Summit. I think it's 20th, 23rd of June in Greensboro, North Carolina. Amanda May, Filippo Bionde, ton of cool speakers are going to be there. I'm also at the Gaia Sphere Ancient Civilization event on the 9th, 10th of August in Colorado. And we're running our November conference in England, the Origins Conference, on the 1st of November. We've got some cool people there, Robert Temple. We've got the guy who did the research on Blickmead, David Jacks. And obviously the team, myself, JJ and Andrew and others as well. And also we're going to be running a tour back to Turkey in September 9th to the 21st, focusing on Eastern Turkey, some of the sites we spoke about, in fact, today. That's the kind of big next thing we're kind of really doing. We've got Jim Vieira, he's coming over for our England tour in the summer. And we're heading out to Peru, actually, and Bolivia and Easter Island in November. I know you've just recently been there. Looks like you had an amazing time. And yeah, we've got a few things lined up for next year, like Malta, Ireland, Egypt, and a few other places. So yeah, lots going on. People can just find me, Hugh Newman, search for me, or megalithomania.co.uk. So it's all out there.
So go to megalithomania.co.uk, click on the tours section to see their whole upcoming tours. Go on a tour and get one of Hugh's books. There's a book tab. He's got some of the best books out there if you're into ancient history, alternative history, solstice alignments, giants. We can't forget that. We didn't even really get to talk about giants, but Hugh's done some of the best research on the subject of ancient giants. So Hugh, thank you so much for your time. Everybody says subscribe to the Megalithomania YouTube channel. And Hugh, have a great summer, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Dee. Appreciate it. Let's catch up soon.